Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. I'm Deborah Garlick from Henpicked, and this session is called Harness the Power of Your Menstrual Cycle. Did you know that your hormones change throughout your menstrual cycle and how this affects your mood, energy, focus, and overall well-being? Well, this session is going to help you understand your body's natural rhythms and learn practical ways to work with it so you can feel at your best at every stage of the month. I'm also calling this the hashtag what they didn't tell you at school. And it's not me going to be talking to you about this. We've got the wonderful team from Mooncup with us. So I'm delighted to welcome Emily Smith, who's going to talk us through our menstrual cycle and all that entails. And we have other members of the Mooncup team answering your questions. So if you have any questions at all throughout this session, as usual, we will be answering those questions. So do make sure you talk to us through the webinar chat. So welcome, Emily.
Hi, how are you? Welcome everyone.
Great, thank you. And what is this all about? Harness the power of your menstrual cycle. This is certainly not something that we ever covered at school.
I guess just first of all to introduce myself for those who don't know, I'm Emily from Mooncup, and I'm head of sales and I've been in the business for over 5 years now, and really excited to chat with you, Deborah, and share all about this. As exactly as you just mentioned, Deborah. More and more people are talking about menstruation and cycle syncing than actually even 2 3 years ago. But the reality is that people with periods do still struggle to find support. And when I was at school, you couldn't talk about periods. It was largely shame and taboo. And it's fantastic that conversations like this are starting and happening, and that we're able to have this webinar with all of you attending. But the reality is that still a lot of us don't understand what's going on for you during your cycle and how best to work with it and lean into that rather than resist it. So I really wanted this time to share more information on that, basically, so we have more information.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Emily. I mean, you're already saying things that I have no idea what you're mean by that. So when you say cycle syncing, for me, it's a new thing. I mean, anybody that's experienced periods, and I know for myself, my daughter, you don't feel the same every day of the month. But I didn't have any clue why that was. So I'm over to you now then to tell us a little bit about what actually are the stages of the cycle.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're welcome. And just to let you all know that there will be a Q&A section at the end, so feel free, everyone, to write some questions that you have in the chat, and we'll be on hand to support with any that we can if we have time. Well, we will make time, but for as many as we can. So today we're going to cover a few different points on that. So I'll introduce you to the menstrual cycle and the various phases within that. I'll also talk through what to expect during those different phases of your menstrual cycle. Um, Within that, there'll be practical ways to manage your symptoms, how to work with your cycle. Can you still see my screen? Out of interest, just checking. Perfect. Just checking you can see me. And then practical ways, as I mentioned, to manage your symptoms, how to work with your hormones rather than against them. And then, as I mentioned, a Q&A. But before I do go and continue with this, just to let you know that I'm not a doctor, and neither are those on hand from the Mooncup team who will be on hand to talk through Q&As. So if you do have any questions related to your own health and advice, it's always best to speak to your GP or gynecologist. So just wanted to make that clear. So introducing you all to the menstrual cycle. So it's a very important phase that many of us go through, and a lot of people confuse the menstrual cycle with periods, but they're not actually the same thing. So a period's only the first part of your menstrual cycle, so when you bleed, whereas the menstrual cycle as a whole is an end-to-end cycle, which includes the period. So the menstrual cycle is a natural process which prepares your body for a potential pregnancy, and it typically lasts between 28 and 35 days, although it does vary person to person. So there are four main phases. The menstrual phase is when your cycle begins and when you get your first period. So on average, periods last between 3 and 5 days, but anything between 2 and 7 is considered normal. And you'll usually notice that the first 2 days are your heaviest. And the menstrual phase happens typically after, well, not typically, it does happen after an egg from the previous cycle is released and not fertilized. So your uterus no longer needs its thick uterine lining or your endometrium. So it sheds through your vagina and results in bleeding. Very, very clever. The next is the follicular phase. So the follicular phase actually does start on the first of your period. So there is some overlap between, with the menstrual phase rather. And the follicular phase typically lasts between 10 and 16 days, right up until when you ovulate. So a cool fact, actually, just to digress a little bit, but still related, is that we're all actually born with all the eggs that we'll ever have. And they remain housed in little fluid-filled sacs in our ovaries called follicles, which are our ovarian reserve. So that's pretty cool. But the follicular phase's main job is to mature our eggs. I'm northern, it's mature. The eggs in our ovaries during each cycle, and this maturing process is strictly controlled by your hormones. So only the healthiest egg will eventually mature each month, and the rest of the follicles cleverly reabsorb back into your body. So I'm going to go into during this chat like what that means for each cycle and how best to work with it, but just to kind of go through the more scientific bits first. Of course, as mentioned, we'll answer questions at the end if you've got any, but Deborah, feel free to ask if you do have any along the way. But yeah, once the maturing process is underway in the follicular cycle, part of the cycle rather, controlled by your hormones, then the healthiest egg will mature each month. And so when that happens, that follicle sets a surge of estrogen that thickens the lining of your uterus and then creates a nutrient-rich environment for a possible embryo to grow. So lots of amazing things happening. And then halfway through your cycle, this rising estrogen triggers a spike in what's called a luteinizing hormone, which leads to the release of the mature egg from the ovary. And then the egg travels down the fallopian tube. And this is typically when fertilization is most likely to occur. So interestingly, what not many people know is that ovulation only lasts actually about 24 hours, but it's the key fertility window. So yeah, tracking your cycle is really important to be aware of when that could be. And then with the luteal phase, typically starts from the day after ovulation and lasts until the day before your next period. And so having released the egg during ovulation, this empty follicle transforms into something called the corpus luteum, which sounds like something from Harry Potter. And this releases progesterone, which ultimately is a hormone that helps further thicken the uterine lining, preparing it for possible implantation. But of course, if pregnancy doesn't happen, then this corpus luteum breaks down, hormone levels drop, and then the cycle starts all over again. So it's an amazing, natural, and very wise process from our bodies that's happening every month for many of us. And the length of each cycle, though, can vary and change over time. And it's also easily influenced by factors like stress, diet, exercise, sleep, and medication. So I will touch on that. But first, what to expect during each phase. So of course, with all those different hormone fluctuations going on and changes in your body, hormonal fluctuations during your menstrual cycle can affect how you feel. So if I explain for each of those different 4 phases, so during your period, your hormone levels are low. And there's a slight rise in estrogen, a slight dip in progesterone, and it means that you're typically low on energy, focus, productivity levels, and so to be kind to your body during this time. Physically wise, like physical symptoms, you can typically expect to to experience during your menstruation phase are cramps from your uterine from your muscles contracting to shed the lining, and also headaches and extreme irritability, tiredness, lower back pain from the hormonal fluctuations. You can also experience a lot of bloating, so that's because these hormonal changes can influence how you manage your salt and water, your salt and fluid levels rather, leading to fluid retention. So again, when you experience things in your body, rather than thinking, oh, why is this happening? It's like, oh, I wonder why, leading into the interest of the processes behind rather. It's all very interesting.
Interesting.
And then as you,
That
pardon?
that low in energy reflective, and I'm wondering, anybody listening into this, do we all recognize these symptoms? Because when you look at those different phases and then you look at the potential how we might feel, many of us might experience these. If you had that where it says low in energy but reflective, mine would probably be there'd be a couple of extra ones, eat a lot of chocolate and get really cross with my husband. So that would be the ones he would add to that. But the understanding of knowing these is actually appreciating that you're not just like that. There is a reason why you're experiencing those symptoms, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And after having that low on energy, a bit cranky phase of the menstruation cycle, then you enter the follicular phase, which is, you know, basically a transformation, let's say, as you come out of that, when your skin starts to glow, you feel more energetic, you're happy, confident, and that's because of levels of estrogen arising, which influences brain function. It's a hormone that's linked with the production of serotonin, the happy hormone, and helps enhance cognitive function. So yeah, it's everything's starting to, or feels like it's improving. You look great, you feel great, and you're also feeling more productive as well. So leaning into that part of your cycle to work with that, which I will go on to. And then when you reach ovulation, so right in the middle, as I mentioned, it only lasts for about 24 hours, but it can be a pretty noticeable part of how you feel for your cycle for the days before and days afterwards, just because there is a peak in estrogen just before you ovulate, and then a rise in progesterone afterwards. So physical symptoms like mild pelvic pain, breast tenderness, changes in discharge. Others feel a heightened sense of smell, a mild ache in one side of their lower abs when their eggs released. So, it's almost like our body has superpowers that it's changing across these different phases. But it's all to work with our bodies and ultimately for yeah, potentially creating life is why it's happening or supporting with that. So after ovulation, you enter the luteal phase. My least favorite phase, to be perfectly honest, when for myself and my energy, just when you start experience a change in that kind of rise. So there's changes in levels of estrogen, progesterone, and progesterone typically has a more calming effect, but it also means that your mind can probably feel a bit slower than it was previously. So productivity levels can be a little bit lower. So leaning into that, it's having a natural winding down time. It's a period of it's the phase of the cycle rather that's associated with PMS. So yeah, saying yes to cocooning in your room, having less social time, making sure you're really nourishing yourself with foods and comfort telly. Yeah. So I will go into like what you can do on that. But yeah, with your menstruation phase rather, your body's doing a huge job. So you want to be able to let it. So when your energy levels are lower and you experience this bloating, this cramping, this headaches, it's good to invest time in gentle movement, stretching, slow walks to help ease those cramps, walks in nature as well, just to reconnect. And it's also really important to look after your nutrition here. So because diet can actually worsen your symptoms, so eating iron-rich foods like leafy greens, lentils, lean meats, vitamin C foods, to boost the iron absorption as well, like citrus fruits, magnesium, seeds, nuts, chocolate, dark chocolate. And it's also an ideal time to reflect and rest. So journaling is a really good activity to do when you are menstruating, because it can help manage stress by helping you to gain clarity on your thoughts, as well as reflecting, to be honest, on your symptoms and knowing that you're not just feeling like this for no reason. Your body's going through a time, you know. And then when I mentioned about the follicular phase, about when your energy kicks in and life feels great and you look great, lead into that by going into performance classes, like hit the gym, get to that exercise class, make social plans, and also with your nutrition, you can still continue to work with your body rather than against it by leaning into and eating complex carbohydrates like whole grains, sweet potatoes, because that helps support the rising estrogen. And also recommend eating lots of colourful fruits and veg here. I personally like to try and eat the rainbow every day, although it's quite difficult. Well, that's with natural fruits rather, not like eating a pack of Skittles. That doesn't really count. But yeah, like red. So yeah, eating the rainbow is quite an easy way to kind of fun way rather to think of that. So yeah, follicular phase is a fun one. Then as you enter the ovulation phase, when the egg has been released and lots of powerful things are happening in your body, you can work with that by eating antioxidant foods, complex carbs again, lots of vegetables, more kind of broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, like earthy, nutritional, to support that cell growth, energy renewal, hormone metabolism. But you're naturally more confident and chatty. So, from a work setting, lean into arranging more meetings during that phase, or networking events, talking your talk, showing all your skills. And yeah, obviously you can't always do that with work, right? But if you can, try and add those meetings on that front. And then out of work, with social plans, just know that during this time is when you're going to be able to invest more energy on that side.
Thank you,
And
Emily.
then, yeah,
When you say
you're
about the
welcome.
nutrition, isn't it
Yes.
interesting when you listen to your body? And I know full well eating Skittles is not eating the rainbow, so apologies for that. Said about the menstrual phase there, and I always used to have this real craving for chocolate. I do like chocolate. I do like chocolate a lot, but I actually
Yeah.
like good quality chocolate. So maybe that
Mm-hmm.
was my body saying, "Go and get yourself some chocolate. We need it."
Yeah, so it's actually, rather than like the milk or the white chocolate, it's more the dark chocolate side. So you want to go as 100% as possible, which it can be quite bitter for some to go 100% on dark chocolate, but it's because dark chocolate and cacao is really rich naturally in magnesium, and it's magnesium rich foods that help with your cramps. So that's a natural urge from your body to have chocolate is kind of an intuitive need for magnesium, which is super clever and super interesting. But you can also alternatively have seeds and nuts, which, if you're wanting to have an alternative to chocolate.
Okay.
um, and then the luteal phase. So your hormones are shifting a lot. I mentioned this is when you are entering a bit more the cocoon phase. So your body is craving a bit more, a few more vitamins like zinc. So pumpkin seeds. So after Halloween, if anyone's got any pumpkins left over, dry them out, roast them. Chickpeas, healthy fats to help support your mood and energy levels. But yeah, switching to more steadier, lower impact movement. Yoga is listed as an alternative here. I personally actually teach yoga, and there's some variations of yoga that are not steady and low impact. There are some quite intense ones. So just making sure that you're, choosing a more slower yoga class or slower movement classes during this time. But yeah, sleep is super also important here, and for every single cycle, because lack of sleep or poor sleep quality can help make any cycle symptoms worse. So just taking this a step further, you could be trying to go to bed at a similar time every night, waking up at a similar time, and trying to start your day with sunlight, limiting your caffeine intake, particularly in the afternoon. So Yeah, lots of practical ways, but I'm sure everyone will have lots of questions on that as well. But then how to work with your cycle rather than against it. So cycle syncing is a really great way to understand which phase of your cycle you're in. So as I mentioned, the first day that you bleed, the first time that there is blood, is day one. So that's how you know how to track it. So when you are in that menstruation phase, then of the cycle, then lean into administrative low energy tasks, like cut back on anything that's giving too much, spending too much of your energy rather. Make sure you're getting lots of rest, reducing commitments socially if you can, just during this menstruation phase. I'm not telling you to isolate yourself entirely, but obviously cut yourself some slack as well of needing to work at a bit of a slower pace or live at a slower pace. Follicular phase, lean into your higher energy workouts, more creative thinking, brainstorming activities. But just to mention here that when you start feeling better and you're looking better, there can be this lenience and tendency to like go all out and like fill your calendar. But it is a phase, it is a cycle, and you do need to kind of work with almost as if they're seasons. Like as you enter autumn, rather, you don't just suddenly whack out all the jumpers and the scarves and all the boots. It's kind of this gradual transition into seasons. So kind of bringing that into your cycle, slowly adding in extras and pulling them back as well, if that makes sense. And then with the ovulation side, so yeah, again, leaning into more presentations, networking, and it's a great time to also schedule important meetings because your kind of cognitive function tends to be a bit clearer. So having meetings that are important to convey your best self there can help. Yeah, time to be a go-getter basically. And then in your luteal phase, really prioritizing self-care, being kind to yourself. If you can work from home as much as possible during this phase, lean into that. If you can't, then make sure outside of work that you're giving yourself time of rest, reflection, slower movement activities like a yin yoga or really, cooking some nice nutritional foods I mentioned. And then I guess just to summarize all of that, I know I've mentioned a lot of different things, and hopefully even there's kind of one or two, hopefully even three things that you can take away from this. But working with your cycle is not extra. It's not you being difficult. It's not you, asking too much. It's evidence-based, body first, and really important information to know about yourself to make your everyday life easier. Not only, to be honest, for yourself, but for your partner, for your friends, for your colleagues, just to help everyone to understand what's going on for you. And three ways that you can work, three ways that you can lean into that, I guess, today off the back of this is to, first of all, start tracking your cycle. So use an app, journal, a notes page on your phone or a diary, just to start noting how you're feeling, knowing which phase of your cycle you think you're in at the time. Learn your own signals, and also to choose body kind period products that for when you are menstruating, that you're using products that work with your body as well rather than against them. And hence why I'm representing and speaking on behalf of Mooncup today, because our products are all organic and zero irritants and basically not adding any nasties to a part of your, to the cycle of when you need the more support. So yeah, hopefully that was really helpful. But yeah,
Oh,
opening the forum.
boom.
Oh.
So much information there, Emily. And just people saying, can you share the recording afterwards? There's a lot of information in there. And yes, of course, the recordings of all of our webinars are available on podcast or available on the notes, or you can watch this again. So please know that that's going to be there. But this is you'll probably say this isn't something new, and I'll ask the rest of the Mooncup team to join us. This isn't necessarily that new for you, but for me, and when I said at the beginning, this isn't something that we learned at school. This is it is a lot of information, and it does solve a lot of mysteries for me around why is it that I don't always feel at my best. I don't, all of that sort of thing. It just opens up so many, answers so many questions. And I can see so many people have asked questions around this. So taking a look at them, and I think Megan's in the background. I can see Megan's answering some of the
Can,
questions. Do you want
I
to
can
go
take
ahead,
some.
Megan?
I can take some questions as well, Megan. I don't know if you want to, if there's any burning for you, but one that I can see first of all, and also thank you everyone for um, writing your questions so we can support with them. One from Lisa Napa. Thank you for asking. Do you recommend anything for cramps and pain as normal tablets don't do anything? I think it just comes back to nutrition, diet, sleep. When you experience symptoms, sometimes it's like warning signs from your body that it wants you to listen. It's almost like an internal dialogue from your body. So maybe it's cramping because you need to rest more, you need to sleep more. It wants to have more nutritional diet to help ease those symptoms. But also, if you're experiencing cramps during your period, um, there are some products that can change to support that. So, for example, a lot of mainstream tampons typically expand widthways much more than they need to, and sometimes that can mean your vaginal muscles are working much harder to hold them in place, right? If it's really wide, so switching to our tampons or our pads or our menstrual cups or period pants can help support with that cramps because your body's not having to work with that product that's expanding to widthway. So that makes sense. Um,
It does.
Megan, I don't know if
And
you want to add anything.
I think one of the other questions were around tracking, because some people don't know where their periods are. Some people might not be experiencing periods, sorry, a menstrual cycle or the flow that you mentioned, and don't know where they are. And you mentioned apps earlier, and we've got one recommendation, and I'm keen to know if the Mooncup have any other recommendations for apps that do track where you are. Got one that says My Days. Somebody said the Louise Newson Balance app records periods and symptoms on it. I think that might be more towards menopause. But, if you look at the concept of what you're saying, what I think you're saying is the awareness of understanding the cycle means that we can look at this as our superpower. Know when it's best for you to do some things, and when other days you might not be feeling like you want to go out and partying, like you might want chocolate and Netflix, and being kind to yourself on those sort of days. So, are you aware of any other apps at all that would be very, very helpful for people?
Yeah, I think it's there's lots of options out there, but rather than I guess sharing a specific one from my side or from us as a brand, it's more choosing one um, which you feel from their user interface and how the app works best for you. I think it's personally useful, first of all, perhaps to even just identify through your own calendar which is your day one, which is the first day that you bleed, so that you can just have an awareness of that. And then starting off with writing down on your second day, how do you feel, what are your symptoms, and just getting your own interpretation of how that changes in your body. And you'll notice, as I mentioned on ovulation, or maybe I didn't mention this actually, but there is a change of discharge along the various cycle phases. And there's lots of educational resources out there, and you can start typically working out, okay, like my day 14. Well, this is assuming a 28-day cycle, and there's various levels of cycles, but your ovulation days is when the discharge typically really changes, so you can just mark that yourself on a calendar. But yeah, lots of amazing apps out there, but don't want to name names of one that I would recommend, but rather just you find your own one. But
No, and actually, I can see that members of our community are saying different apps, and Harriet said Stardust, try that one. And thank you, everybody, for putting in your other suggestions on those. Find the one that works for you is probably the best thing, because I know sometimes I download apps and I look at them for a bit and I think, yeah, I'm not really that bothered about that one anymore. So find one that works for you. Now, Emily, I am going to ask you about this one, because the reason, we do partner with Mooncup. We love what you do. And the reason we went looking for you is many people, and I don't know if my colleague Sharon's joining us today, is super big on the environment. And we are, and the employers we work with are as well. So when you talk about products, and I've got some here, these aren't for me. These my daughter's getting these later on account of the fact I'm menopausal. I have not had a period for 10 years. But what we liked about these, or what you scared me with one day in London when we were talking, is around actually how many of us don't realise what's in our period products. We don't see.
Yeah, we don't, and that's the reason for that. There's no legislation right now for period care brands to actually reveal what's in them. So we have to have conversations like this that we can spread the word ourselves, with more and more people, because most mainstream period products are made of 95% plastic. They never ever break down. They're adding significant amount of waste to landfill, because each of us who menstruate use roughly 11,000 period products per menstruating lifetime. So that's a lot of plastic, 11,000 times 95% plastic. So from a sustainability perspective, it's alarming. That's a lot of plastic being used by one person. But not only that, there's microplastics that are in contact with such an important part of our bodies, from pads, but also tampons if they're made of plastic, which a lot of mainstream products are made from rayon, which is a synthetic polymer. I've got so much information on this. If anyone wants to reach out, drop me a message on LinkedIn, Emily Mooncup. I'm more than happy to share more information on this. But yeah, our pads and tampons contain absolutely zero petroleum plastics. There's no microplastic leaching from any of our tampons, as you're inserting it in such an important part of your body. So it is really important to have these conversations, to learn and question what are the products that I'm using, and how is this impacting not only the planet, which is of course incredibly important. This is why we're living in this beautiful place, but also the impact of your own health. So yeah, we as a business are really passionate about driving that forward, with creating products that work with our bodies rather than against them. And hence why I wanted to have this conversation as well today. It's not only about how you can live your lifestyle with working with your bodies, but also with the products that you're using.
Yeah, and it's not just as I say, you've got the Moon Cup, which is very sustainable, but you've also got the pads now, which haven't got the plastic in there as well. So lots to look for, and you can get them in where?
So pads and the menstrual cups are in Sainsbury's, Boots, Ocado, Holland and Barrett, and in all the big stores, that is, and online, and all of the Holland and Barrett stores, to be fair, UK and Ireland. But you can also obviously get all of the products on our website, and also we're doing our best to get our products, our pads and tampons, free access in as many business bathrooms as possible. So we're already in lots of well-known businesses, bathrooms like Canva, Octopus Energy, Dannon, for example. But we're also in lots of hotels, lots of gyms, if you've seen us in Barry's or Third Space, or many others. So yeah, if anyone is looking to have free access to pads and tampons in your business, or in your gym, or in a hotel you love to visit in your free time, or holidays, etc., reach out to me on LinkedIn or drop me an email, emily@wearemooncup.com. It's a budget that's provided by your HR team, but it's free access for their members and employees, etc. So a worthwhile initiative, so you
A
can use the
worthwhile
products that
initiative.
us.
And I often say to people, it's very often that CSR box ticked, because they don't realise that the products they're putting in the toilet at the moment aren't sustainable products. So, but thank you very much for that 101. For as much for me, when you're in your 60s, you don't have periods anymore. But I'm looking at this and thinking, why on earth didn't I know this when I was in my 20s? So, of course, my daughter is becoming very well educated on her menstrual cycle, and thinking about what period products that she uses and everything like that. So I'm sure we'll come back soon, because there are so many questions that came through. And thank you very much to everybody for talking with us on the chat. We will come back to you, because we'll be answering some more of your questions very, very soon. So thank you very much, Mooncup. Thank you very much, Emily, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.